What up? Welcome back to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And this week, out in the wilderness, I did come across one more movie that I just wanted to take a look at it on its own. Now, what I came across was this sealed copy of Twilight Zone, the movie. Now, I picked it up for, I think this was $1, but I do own this right here. Surprisingly, this movie has not gotten many releases. It's on DVD, of course, but I also own this old school Blu-ray. Now, you don't really come across this Blu-ray that much, and until somebody decides to put out another edition, this is pretty much the only way you could see this movie. Now, this movie was released in 1983. It's not so much a horror movie as it is a sci-fi fantasy. You know, it's based on the TV series, of course, created by Rod Serling. Now, in the intro to this movie, Burgess Meredith actually does the narration, and he was in a lot of old school Twilight Zone episodes. But this movie does have two wraparounds: the intro, the prologue, and the epilogue, and it contains 4 segments. Now, the beginning shows 2 guys driving down a desolated road. Of course, you have Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks, and they are driving along, and they start they're jamming out to some Creedence, and then they start talking about old movies and themes, and then it gets into Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits. Basically, the guy tells the other guy, you want to see something really scary, and he pulls over to the side of the road and turns into like some kind of ghoul monster and attacks him. So this was directed by John Landis, of course, from the director of American Werewolf in London, but he also directed the first segment, Time Out. Now, this story stars Vic Morrow, who unfortunately died in the filming of this movie. The story's about pretty much a bigot jerk that talks a lot of crap about other races. So when he's drinking at the bar with his friends one night, he ends up getting shot into like different times, like World War II, Vietnam, the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, he pretty much sees, you know, how it feels to be on the other side, because in each segment, of course, he gets attacked for not being the race that he's supposed to be or whatever. But in the end, he gets blown up by some Vietnam soldiers, and he gets sent right back to Nazi German. I mean, to the Nazis, and they put him in a concentration camp train. And then he sees his friends, but they don't hear him, and that's how this one ends. But this is the first one. This is the only segment that is not a remake of an old Twilight Zone episode. This is a original story, and the original ending was actually Vic Morrow's character Bill ends up at a Vietnamese village, and they're getting attacked by army helicopters. So he picks up 2 kids and drags them to safety. So this is supposed to be like his redemption, that you see he like changed his ways. But actually, the actor Vic Morrow and the 2 kids were killed in the filming of this, and they did sue John Landis, and Steven Spielberg was involved, but in the end they were acquitted, but they were found guilty of like child labor laws and stuff like that. So they became really strict, like after this, about safety and stuff like that. And actually, Vic Morrow, one of his friends, said that he had dreams of dying in a helicopter, and his last words were, "I should have got a stunt double, because they could kill me." So that's pretty weird. But anyways, we get into the second segment, which is Kick the Can, which is a remake of a old Twilight Zone episode. This one has what's his name, Scatman Carruthers in it, and it's basically a story of some old farts that get turned into young whippersnappers. This is pretty much the weakest segment. It's the character Scatman Carruthers plays Mr. Bloom. He comes in and tells him that he wants to play Kick the Can with him. They go out in the night and everybody starts turning young again. But then most of the kids realize that they can't live being young because they're already old. So they ask him to turn them back to their original age. But only one kid decides to just go out on his own. But at the end of this segment, you just see Mr. Bloom go up to the next old folks home, and I guess he's just gonna keep spreading his magic. Like I said, this is not one of the more remembered ones, but it's good. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, who of course directed Jaws and Indiana Jones. So then you get into the third segment, which is called It's a Good Life. And I actually remember watching this old Twilight Zone episode on TV, and I remember it kind of freaked me out when I saw it because I was a little kid. Now, of course, this episode is directed by Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins. Of course, this one stars Kathleen Quinlan from Apollo 13, and she's basically a teacher that's moving cross country to another job, and she just happens to run into this kid that lives in a small town at a diner. And then as she's leaving, she ends up hitting him with her car, so she offers him a ride home. So they get to her house, and she ends up seeing that it's really disturbing in there, and all his family acts weird. He pretty much controls his family. She could kind of tell he has like weird powers, but she won't say anything about it. I mean, there's one of his sisters. They say that she talked bad about him, so he made her mouth, took away her mouth. So when they show her, you just show a blank where her mouth is supposed to be. It's just blank. And he pretty much terrorizes the family and makes them eat like peanut butter burgers and ice cream every day. And every day he wants to have a birthday, and it's pretty weird, but it pretty much goes with the old episode. Some freaky creatures come out. I remember in the old episode, he turns his uncle into a jack-in-the-box, and then he sends one of his other family members into the cornfield, and so it's pretty crazy. But at the end, she ends up deciding to lure him to get out of the house, and she asks him that if she teaches him how to use his powers, that if he'll go with her, and he does. But you don't know what ends up happening, but you see that he turns a new leaf, and he doesn't want to be so evil anymore. The final segment, of course, is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. This is a remake. This was originally starred William Shatner, but of course this is a remake, and it stars John Lithgow. It's directed by George Miller, who of course directed Mad Max. It's pretty crazy. This is pretty much the coup de grace of the segments. It's filmed pretty crazy, and it's this guy that he's on a plane, and he's really paranoid, and he's suffering attacks and stuff in the plane. And then he decides to start looking out the window, and he sees some kind of creature, and nobody believes him. And then At one point you think he's like, it's done, he's like going to sleep, and he's paused. They gave him some pills, and nope, he goes and opens that little like slide protector on the window, and there's the I think it's a gremlin, and he freaks the hell out. He freaks out, and there's a little annoying girl in there, and then a fat guy, he's like an air marshal. He takes his gun and he blows out the window, and then he like gets sucked through the window, and the air marshal's like holding on to him. Well, the gremlin, he tries to shoot the gremlin, and the creature comes and grabs his face, and then like just freaks him out, and then jumps off the plane. So when they land, he's talking about a creature, and like nobody believes him. But when they do go and investigate the engine of the plane, it's like all ripped up. And then this wraps us around back to where they put him in the ambulance, and the ambulance driver is, of course, Dan Aykroyd, the character from the beginning. And he asks him, like, you want to see something really scary? And then he plays a tape of Creedence, and that's pretty much the end of the movie. But like I said, this movie, you don't really hear people talking about it. It doesn't have many releases. It was cool to pick up an extra copy. I'm sick like that, so I had to pick it up anyways, even though I own it. But it's a really fun movie. It's not the best, but I mean, it's pretty cool, and you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So that's Twilight Zone. Thanks for checking out the video. See you on the next one.